What is going on, everyone? Welcome to yet another episode of the Schoch Factor Podcast, where this week we have a special delivery coming straight from Jake Mintz. He is coming from the car. Of course, we appreciate the extreme versatility and flexibility. That's what you want out of a fellow weird arm slot guy. Jake, how are you doing today?
Another beautiful day in paradise, Steve. No Jordan Schusterman this week, but we persevere. Okay. Somebody slept through their alarm this morning by about 45 minutes. That somebody was not me. And so I'll let the listeners kind of deduce who else it could have been. And what that's resulted in is, we got to make adjustments. I'm sitting in my car in a hydrant spot here in New York City, creating some chaos on the street. But if I get into a fight with a delivery driver halfway through the pod, we roll on. That's just a road victory.
But also, I think what's important to note about being in front of the hydrant is how willing you are to help in case of an emergency. If a fire were to bust out, it's just most fire departments, they'd be like, car in the way. This fire department would be like, hey, +1 for the good guys,
Steve, they don't call relievers firemen for nothing. You know what I'm talking about. Your podcast, we're going to be talking about Clemson and Wake Forest. They played. Wake won all those games. South Carolina, Georgia. I want to talk about Charlie Condon. Is he the real home run king? Does this count? Do we care? Yes. I saw Paul Skeens throw in the major leagues, and then we'll go through the moments in the Giblet ticklers and the pitchers and players of the week. So Stevie Schoch, college baseball's most beloved figure. Where do you want to begin?
I want to start off with ECU and Tulane. One, because what a series. This was something that I don't know if it was on a lot of people's radars that Tulane was going to sweep this weekend against ECU. And this is really honestly like crunch time for ECU when it comes to terms of like a national seed and things of that nature.
Big series for you logistically. ECU is pretty close to you. If you want to go to a regional or a super, that's the best shot for Stephen Schoch. So not only was it a bad weekend for ECU, but it was a bad weekend for Steve.
Yeah, really just scheduling wise, but also double-edged sword. My friend Billy's on Tulane, which if you follow me on Twitter, you know that. And if you're the Tulane media person, you also know that because I will not shut up about Billy. But Billy pitched and he pitched well. But I took in this game a little bit differently. I listened to this one on the radio as I was driving home from my niece's birthday party. And let me tell you, happy birthday, nieces, twins. I think it's actually in 8 days, but that's beside the point. They don't listen yet. They're turning one. Like fifth birthday, that's when we'll get more specific.
The plural of niece is actually nice.
Nices. Yeah, my nice.
No, nice. Just nice.
My twin nice. Where they were great. They had a good time,
Okay, so you were listening to this on the radio. How often do you listen to baseball on the radio, Steve?
This was the first time. Like the first time I can remember since like high school. When obviously I've listened to baseball on the radio before, but like there's been a hiatus because I have a life of luxury where I'm always making sure I'm tuned in and I'm like just watching on ESPN because the world's so different now.
I know. I listen to baseball on the radio probably every day. So I'm very curious what your experience was not being able to see the baseball.
It's awesome. I am so in on it. It's way better because you get to imagine the plays. Now, don't get me wrong. I do love watching these young men make magic on the baseball field and make the diving plays. But I also like that, like when you're listening on the radio, the announcer and the color guy, he'll take you like 90% of the way of what happens. And then there's like 10% that I think is up for imagination. Like, how did the player freestyle when they got to the ball? And let me tell you, listening to my friend Billy pitch on the radio where you can't see what's happening and you're just relying solely on Tulane's radio broadcaster, who I believe is a gentleman named Corey Gloor that we'll get into in a little bit. But it's just a way different way to take in a baseball game. If you haven't done it, highly recommend it, especially with college baseball games, because in this case, this guy, he broadcasts all their games for the radio like it's his profession. But in some cases, you'll get like the student run broadcast, which
Oh,
seems perfect. Like that is a great way to take in a baseball game.
absolutely. And you get with the college broadcast, you get a really hyper local feel too. I would imagine that the ads on the Tulane broadcast are particularly entertaining, and you get a lot of calling players by their first names on a local college radio broadcast. I think it's a fascinating energy to take the game in. And, my biggest problem with baseball as a sport is that it doesn't have anything to do with Steve Schoch's imagination. And so by listening to it on the radio, you get to add 10% of your own imagination. That's a really beautiful thing to see. I'm glad that you enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, it feels nostalgic. It feels like, hey, this is the way it was kind of meant to be taken in. Like, hey, the family's we may have had a bad day and it's the 1920s and the economy's in the shitter, but we're all gonna gather around the radio and listen to the Cubs.
I love like,
that sounds nice.
I'm just picturing Steve, huddled around the radio listening to FDR give the State of the Union in 1935. But hey, Steve, call them 3-lane because they swept.
They did. The path to Omaha is a 3-lane highway. Tulane, they really impressed this weekend. And, it was a weekend where a lot of the top 10 teams ended up losing their weekend series. And Tulane just kind of stepped it up. I know they had one walk-off win where in the bottom of the ninth, Colin Tuft, a former UVA Cavalier, transferred out, never played with him. He was there a year after me. He got hit by a pitch with the bases loaded, or walked with the bases loaded. I think it was the hit by pitch, though. And that was how they won one game. And then the final game was actually a moment of the week, which we will get into in a little bit later.
I want to give a quick shout out to a guy on Tulane named Jackson Lynn, Linn, who had a phenomenal weekend hitting out of the 9-hole. And whenever a 9-hole hitter shows up some real power numbers, I think it's time to kind of change the narrative about the 9-hole guy, right? It's not second leadoff. It's not second leadoff. It's like second. It's like second 4-hole guy, second 4.5-hole guy. 5-hole, second 5-hole guy, second 5-hole guy.
Yeah,
and it's like
the second version of that.
Or you're the first 9-hole hitter. God damn it! Like don't patronize me with something else. I'm hitting last. First is worst. Second is the best. Last is the one with all the RBIs. And Jackson Lynn had a real clutch weekend for Tulane in that sweep. 2-run home run in the 8th inning, I believe, of the finale.
Yep.
To tie it and send Tulane to extra innings where they would eventually win. Yeah,
and in that game, he also allegedly had 2 unbelievable catches at the warning track on back-to-back plays, which, I think you're right, though. I think it's time we stop gaslighting the 9-hole hitters. Like, look, coach, you put me here for a reason. You put me in the 9-hole slot. Like, just own it. Let's own it. I'm in the 9-hole spot. We're going to make it cool.
Guys are always looking for doubters, reasons to put chips on shoulders. And there is no bigger slight than your own coach saying to you, compared to everyone on our team today, I think you are the least likely to do well at the plate. And there is evidence in this, right? You can look at the lineup and your name is freaking last. So when you go up to the plate as a 9-hole guy, know that your coach doesn't believe in you and you're out there to prove that doofus wrong.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to take into account, if it's a handwritten lineup card, which I assume most are, how shaky the coach's handwriting is putting your name next to the 9-hole spot too. Because then it's like, oh, he's not even sure that he wants. You need
like a handwriting expert, like get an FBI handwriting expert. How nervous was the person who scripted this?
I think that's the only way to truly find out how much your coach believes in you. That's how you get to that level of transparency with your players.
Really important stuff. Steve, let's move on to Clemson against Wake Forest, the battle of the ACC, our favorite conference, just because we love the Atlantic Ocean here on the Shoch Factor Podcast. And Steve, who is closer to the Atlantic Ocean, do you think? Clemson or Wake Forest?
I got to go with Wake Forest on this one. I think Clemson's actually pretty far inland when you look at it, but I also could be completely wrong because the curvature of South Carolina. So I'll reach out to our Atlantic Ocean rep, and because of course
I think it's about equidistant, maybe a little closer.
Wow,
for Winston-Salem.
If I know one thing, it's that Coach Rooney is going to be very excited to hear that the word equidistant was used.
I think it's dude, it's basically like a square from where Clemson is to Winston-Salem to where you live to Charleston. So there you go.
Okay. All right. That actually puts it in phenomenal portion. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So anyway, I think Wake is slightly closer to the Atlantic, and that's probably why they swept in a battle of heavyweights in the ACC. Wake has had a very bizarre up and down, topsy-turvy season, but they're getting hot at the right time.
Yeah, I'm
Ron Burgundy.
I get so confused this year. Like, the top has, like, talent has just been so spread out in college baseball this season. Like, I feel like it's one of the few seasons where, aside from a few teams, there hasn't been a clear, like, dominating force. And even when a team becomes a dominating force this season, something happens while they're up there and it all changes. So Clemson, obviously a phenomenal team. They've been having an incredible season. Coach Bakich has been cemented at Clemson for a couple of years now, and it's clearly showing that he knows what he's doing.
Baby got Bakich.
I don't think anyone should be surprised by that. And Wake Forest, we expected a lot out of them coming into the season. They kind of have a few injuries take guys down. I know Cole Rowland was out for a little bit, and now recently Michael Massey has been out with a bit of a back injury, which, we don't know the extent of that injury. I know that it hasn't been called season ending yet, so we're hopeful and optimistic, but we're also
Baby got back
injuries. Stink. Yeah, you don't want that. But you really got back in the win column too, because Wake Forest taking 3, which, and it was kind of in dominating fashion. Like, it wasn't games where it was like, oh, are they going to sneak away with this one? Like, it was, they were playing like themselves again, or the last year version of themselves. I know Seaver King had some really far home runs that were really cool to watch. So it was just a pretty complete weekend out of Wake Forest. I do want to shout out, one of the media people did capture a picture of Cole Rowland throwing his glove. And like, it's just such a cool picture. The glove is in the foreground. It's kind of blurry. It's clearly taken from like the concourse area. But it was just such a cool picture.
So couple things here that are big for Wake. One is getting Josh Hartle right. He was topsy-turvy at the beginning of the year. He went 6, allowed 3, 9 Ks though. We thought that Wake was going to have this outrageous rotation with Hartle, Burns, and Michael Massey, and it just hasn't totally been that. Hartle kind of getting back on the right track has been good. And then, like you mentioned, Cole Rowland, who, if you're kind of a Wake Forest casual, he's the psycho who screams at himself pretty consistently on the mound. He had scoreless appearances on both the Friday and the Saturday game. That's a big deal. And then the Saturday game for Wake, they didn't get a great start from David Falco Jr., but then the bullpen threw up, I believe, was a 6, basically 6 scoreless, 5 2/3 scoreless innings against Clemson without an earned run. That's pretty good. Sorry, 1 run over 6 innings. Like, that's the big game changer for them. So I'm really excited to see what Wake can be. I think if they get hot, they can definitely make some noise. I just have a little bit of it's just impossible really to know what they are. And I guess in college baseball this year, it's impossible to know anything just because of all the parity that we've had.
It's a
mess. Who would love this? Who would love this season would be Weird Al Yankovic. Big parody guy.
Weird Al Yankovic is the foundation for the Stephen Schoch, the man that you see before you today. My favorite, I had the poodle hat on CD. Got it the day it came out at Best Buy. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like one of the best days of my life. But yeah, the parody has been absolutely insane. And I know Wake Forest having David Falco kind of shifting into that starting role, that's kind of something that'll happen where it's like, sometimes it's not on. And seeing that the bullpen can come out and come up huge for him really helps out and makes me optimistic about coming down the line. Now, you wanted to talk also a little bit about South Carolina and Georgia, which this weekend it was a little bit dominating. Georgia,
dude, Georgia's legit. Wes Johnson bouncing from LSU to take the Georgia job. Everyone was like, it's going to take a couple years for Wes to get the Bulldogs on the right track. And immediately, no break, LSU on the bubble, Georgia potentially hosting. Not what anybody anticipated. Georgia takes 3 games from South Carolina. But what I want to focus on is Charlie Condon, who is the runaway Golden Spikes Player of the Year. He's going to win the D1 Baseball Player of the Year. He's put up just ludicrous numbers this year. Over the weekend, he hit his 34th home run of the season, okay? Which is the all-time record now in the BB Core era. What is the BB Core era? So in 2011, the NCAA changed the rules about bats. Before 2011, you could use basically anything you wanted to hit a baseball over the fence. And most of these bats were supercharged and juiced. And even the Misfits had juice at the time, and they do again. But what that resulted in was just a comical home run environment, right? And so Charlie Condon's 34th home run is the most in the BB Core era. BB Core bats are like the new wave of bats, right? Is the all-time record in a season is Pete Incaviglia hit 48 home runs for Oklahoma State in 1985. Who is the college baseball home run king, Steve? Is it Pete Incaviglia? Is it Charlie Condon? Is it in between?
I want to just give a hat tip to you for fighting your way through that word. Me, I would have given up. I would have, after the first 2 stumbles, I would have said, you know what, not for me, but you know who I'm talking about. I got to say, Pete still kind of holds the crown.
I agree.
Because that is absolutely insane. Like, I understand technology was different, and no one, honestly, it seems like no one can catch that record, which, like, that's a record that's going to stand.
Well, also, like, can you look up how many games Pete Incaviglia did that in? That's the one thought I have. Maybe they played like a ton of games, but I find it hard to believe. And this is why I am. Congrats, Charlie Condon. Unbelievable. How many games, Steve?
3 in 3 seasons. He hit 100 home runs in 213 games.
But how many home runs did he hit in the year he hit 40? How many games was the 48 homer season?
All right, we're pulling that one up.
I should have just done this myself. Sorry.
You're a faster guy than me. You're smarter than me. 75 games, 48 home runs.
Okay, that is a lot of games. That's a lot of games. But from a technology standpoint, okay, and this is why I wanted to bring this up. I understand that we're still technically in the BB Core era, but the offensive environment currently in college baseball feels like something different. I know that it's the same bat regulations that we had when Pete Alonso hit 4 home runs as a junior or whatever the heck, technically, but it's also not. It's just we are in another different world. We're in a different era. And I find it incredibly hard to believe that the technology Pete Incaviglia had in his bat was somehow better than the technology Charlie Condon has in his bat. So I know that we're like, oh, that was the hot bat era and we're in the cold bat era, but that is just not the case. And so in my mind, Pete Incaviglia remains the home run king. What Charlie Condon is doing is historic and unbelievable and incredible and mad respect. What a player. However, it's like, well, back in the day, it was so easy to hit home runs. Whereas right now it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of backside bombs, and I know, like, if everyone were swinging the 2025 Soldier Tank BB Core baseball bat, I would be like, okay, makes sense. But it's different. It's different this year, and it's a completely different environment. And, I always think back to when the NCAA would allow drop 5, like 2 3/4 barrel bats. That's when it was just like, oh, people are going to die out here. But it's always so interesting to me that, like, we as human beings want to be the best. We want to be at the peak. We get a new iPhone every year. Why are baseball bats the one technology where we're like, don't get better, don't get better at this, don't
because
get better?
We can't have people taking 145-mile-an-hour line drives off the face. We put governors on race cars, Steve.
Well, that seems inefficient. I think they should go faster. Don't you want them to go fast? We don't limit Usain Bolt. We don't go, hey man, you can't run faster than everybody else.
We do limit the shoes he can wear.
Do we?
Yeah,
I feel like
you can't wear like moon boots.
Well, yeah, I mean, moon shoes. Are you talking about the trampoline shoes or the shoes astronauts wear?
Yes.
Anyway, I digress. I understand it's for safety. I just wish there were one company that was like, hey, look, if we didn't put, little caps on these bats, this is how strong they would be. And like, you could buy one just to mess around with your friends.
Meanwhile, Pete Incaviglia, he went down to the scrap yard, found some aluminum, and then
he hand rolled it, I believe.
He hand rolled it and hit 48 home runs with it. Speaking of bats, Steve, what bat do you prefer to swing?
The bat I prefer is the 2025 Soldier Tank BB Core baseball bat. Now, this isn't just any bat. It is lighter and hotter than any of its predecessors, and this is thanks to its infused power alloy technology that creates an ultra big, ultra hot sweet spot. Crafted from over 2.5 years of research and development, the Soldier Tank is the perfect blend of speed and power, designed for both power and contact hitters. It features a formula for success: speed times mass times impact equals extreme power. I've seen it swung. Even the miss hits have juice with the Soldier Tank. The bat is priced at an incredible $311, which is well worth it to swing the top scoring BB Core bat ever. They're selling out fast, though, so head over to soldiersports.us to secure yours today.
Pete Incaviglia would have hit 763 home runs with the Soldier Tank in 1985 if he had it.
Look, I'm not going to say that's not true. I did want to give an update on the Soldiers because this weekend Army was playing Bucknell because the Patriot League has their championship is set up where they have the semifinals. Only 4 teams make the playoffs. In the semifinals, the 4 teams play a series against each other. Winner of each series goes on, plays each other.
I gotta say,
3-game series.
I kind of like that format more. I think Hoover is amazing, but it gets to a point where it's kind of fake baseball, and we're not getting a fair representation of what the teams are. You know what I mean? If you're having like Mississippi State play a game at 2 a.m. with their 5-starter, I'm not really learning much. Whereas if you have a 3-game set with the 4 best teams, it's like, let's go toe to toe. It's replicable of what you're doing all season long. So I don't think that format would work in some of the bigger conferences, but I do like that the Patriots are up to that.
I love this format. I think it's so cool. Does it stink for the teams that don't make it? Sure, but hey.
Don't like it, play better, baby. Sorry.
Yeah, make the tournament. But I want to give a shout out to Army because they were against Bucknell. They were down 7-2 in the 7th. They put up 5 runs. And then in the 8th, they had another 2. They ended up winning 9-7 against the Bucknell Bison. And then they have game 2 of a doubleheader right after that. They go down a little bit early, but they end up winning that game as well. And now they are going on to face the Naval Academy in the Patriot League Championship, also known, Jake, as a fill in the blank. Do you remember the joke you made?
No, hit me.
The Civil War. It's one of my favorite jokes that I heard you made. And then
thanks, man.
It stuck with me. Anytime I see service academies going at it, I think of it. Now,
they're going to have the Joint Chiefs of Staff umpire this game.
I heard that, like, that's just the checks and balances of our different branches of government. You love to see it in action, honestly. But Another service academy I want to give a shout out to is Air Force. They traveled on what I believe is a C-130. I don't really know planes that well, but they tweeted a picture of them driving back or flying back from their series in the back of one of their clear military planes. It doesn't look like a comfortable flight, but it looks like an Air Force flight. It looks very on brand, and we love to see that.
Well, I mean, you got an institutional advantage in that you can just get on any plane. You might as well use it, you know?
I don't know how the Air Force works, but I feel like even if it's a Southwest flight, you can be like, hey, look, I'm kind of an expert up there. Would you like me to be on your plane with you?
I don't think being on the Air Force baseball team allows you to legally commandeer an airplane at any point you want while in flight. That's just what I think, but I could very well be wrong. Steve, who was your Giblet tickler of the week?
So the Giblet tickler of the week is, I mentioned him earlier. His name is Corey Gloor. He is the Tulane radio broadcaster from my research. But I got to lay out the scene for you, Jake, because he said a word and I don't know what it means, but I'm going to use the word. And I want to use the word down later in life, so I need some explanation. But tied 9-9 in the top of the ninth against the number 6 team in the nation, this gentleman breaks out the sentence, these two have had some real slobber knockers against each other. What does that mean? How do I spell it? Use it in a sentence? What? I don't know, but that word has been in my brain. I had never thought of the word sequence slobber knockers in my life until I heard that. And I've thought about it about 1 million times since.
So my understanding, it seems to be like an old timey word, obviously, like brouhaha. It's kind of in that same.
Yeah.
I think honestly, brouhaha and slobber knocker are pretty similar.
They might be like synonyms.
Like a fight, like a hard hitting brawl, like a real going toe to toe slobber knocker. Now, the problem with slobber knocker is that if you don't know what it means, it sounds unnecessarily sexual. Yeah. And that can get you in some real hot water with human resources. But slobber knocker in that context is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's two teams with a hard fought series, a couple of real slobber knockers.
Like it felt right. Like I didn't immediately go, that feels sexual. Like it took me a minute to get there. So I was like, okay.
Like those Wake Forest LSU games in Omaha last year, those were some slobber knocking contests.
I'm with you. Okay, that makes sense. Well, either way, Corey Gloor, thank you for tickling my giblets. I won't say slobber in my knockers because that feels off.
Don't say that. Right. Definitely don't
say
that.
But thank you for adding one word to the Stephen Schoch vocabulary. Because
we're up to 12.
We know it's not that vast.
Let's go through some moments, Steve. You mentioned this. Connor Rasmussen for Tulane, a former ECU Pirate, walks it off against his old club. We're getting so much more of this nowadays because of all the transferring. Revenge games.
Which I'm all here for. Like, I think those are awesome. I feel like if you have a player transfer out, you should have to schedule a couple of games against their new team just to see what they're missing out on, you know? And that could go either way because it could be like, okay, this guy transferred out. Now we're upset with him. We're going to stomp him, you know? Or it could be, all right, they didn't want me. Now I'm going to prove that they should have wanted me, you know? And that's what this one felt like. And it seemed like there was a lot of love for him after the game from both sides. So you love to see stuff like that.
So I think most transfers, right? And you did it 5 times. I would imagine most transfers, there remains love between the player that leaves and the players that stayed. However, I do love the idea that like you hit a walk-off home run against the team you used to play for, and your chirp is, I had a disappointing experience at your program. If you just screamed that at the other dugout, because it just hits so hard, right? Because it's just so true.
Yeah, and it's like they can't
playing
say
for you was not what I expected. No, they can't.
It could have gone better. I do believe he did actually have a good experience there. So, it was just one of those things that didn't work out. Now everyone is better off. So happy for the kid, but always cool to see those moments because I always wanted one of those moments.
Steve, I don't know if you play an instrument or not, but
I don't.
Ryan Nagelbach of the University of Illinois Chicago certainly does.
He does. He shreds on guitar. He had sent that video and I posted it and I was like, this is sick. And he just replied, I just love baseball and classic rock. And I was like, yes. Yep.
Heck
Sign
yeah.
me up for more of this, dude. I am incredibly jealous. I have spent 27 years of my life and I've never shredded on the guitar. None of my 3 colleges let me play the anthem on the recorder to kick off a game, which
there's a reason for that.
Yeah. They didn't want grown men to weep. That's why.
That's true.
But yeah, just an absolutely awesome moment. Just getting after it on the guitar. I love when you can hear the words in the anthem through the guitar. It feels oddly patriotic. It makes me want to see a waving flag.
Well, I think that I'll talk about the anthem for a quick sec. As someone who is at an MLB game like 5 days a week, I'd be lying if I like the anthem every day. Maybe I'm a bad American. It starts to lose its luster because you just hear so many underwhelming, uninspiring renditions of the national anthem. And when you're a player in a regular season game in college, even when you're playing it every day, it just becomes routine. And so whenever there's an anthem rendition that just stands out and hits, whether that's in the playoffs, right? If you're playing in a regional, the anthem hits harder. But the moments where we get a different good anthem is always a phenomenal experience. And in my opinion, the most patriotic moment in American history is Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, waking up the people on Monday morning with the most inspirational rendition of the national anthem, which was a protest song. Go look that up. Kind of a baller move by Jimmy H. But I am in favor of national anthem renditions that stick out from the bunch. And I think Mr. Nagelbach nailed it.
Yeah, and stick out in a good way. The bad anthems, like the only people who will ever enjoy a bad anthem are the players before a very serious game because it gives them a break, gives them a reminder. Hey, remember to laugh today. Something on the other end of the spectrum that wasn't as fun, something that kind of bummed me out, if I'm being honest with you, was Jack Kaggs getting a standing ovation his last time out at Condren Family Park. Because, it's just, this has not been the season Florida was expecting, but it was really cool to see him get that love, get that attention, and get that appreciation from the Florida faithful. Now, one thing
I'm just moving my car. My car, Steve.
No, you're good, dude. This is the versatility of Jake Mintz, the podcaster. Just a little scoot forward, a little boot scoot and boogie. I was making jokes about fire. We aren't actually having one. You're good, right?
Yeah, I'm killing it. Everything is good. Just had to move the old vehicle in the middle of the podcast. But you're right. I think even in the weird, underwhelming sludge that has been Florida season, Jack Kaggs deserves all the applause in the world, and I am glad that he got that moment. It is better to get that moment than not get that moment. You know what I mean? Taking him out in the middle of the inning is good because those are the types of things that you remember forever, Yeah,
and it's that feeling.
Applause. Yeah.
Like that little bit of love. Like I gotta imagine that feels good. Per Mark Etheridge's reporting, and he's doing great in the weekly pick'em, so I trust him.
Yeah,
Florida needs to win about 2 or 3 from Georgia this weekend, or do really well in Hoover to kind of have a shot
at
the postseason, which will be the first time in the O'Sullivan era, I think, or at least in a long time.
This standing ovation that Jack Kaggs got, would you say that's what college baseball is all about?
I think I would. Okay. That's a fair statement. Now moving along. Another team that has really been impressive, Oklahoma. They won the Big 12 for the first time this season. It's the first time they're regular season champs outright of the Big 12. So, as we all know, congrats to Oklahoma. You're getting relegated to the SEC.
I think you're getting promoted. You're getting promoted.
Yeah. Or I don't know the soccer terms. I thought relegated was the same. I thought it just changed leagues.
It's not about the soccer terms, big dog. It's about what the English words mean. Promoted means going up. Relegated.
We're at 13 now, baby.
means going down. All right, now we're at 14. But yes, it is funny that Oklahoma won the conference this year and immediately is leaving.
Yeah, it's just all right. Had a great
one for
time.
the road. One for the road.
Yeah, just a quick roadie. But in their games this weekend, Bryce Madron had an inside the park grand slam, and it wasn't like a little league home run sort of thing. Like the center fielder go for a ball and it gets by him, and then just pure speed. Like center fielder gets to the ball quick, has an okay-ish relay, like not bad relays at all. Bryce Madron's just already sliding across home plate as the ball is coming in. And he did it with a really cool slide. So I feel like that's the only way to pimp an inside the park home run is with the slide, because you don't get the time to admire it. So good on Bryce.
Steve, you ever forget your jersey at the hotel?
Oh my goodness. Believe it or not, I didn't, but that was just because crippling fear and anxiety of leaving my jersey at the hotel. But I got to say, if you're going to have a good program, you have good players. If you want to have a great program, everybody needs to be good, from your players down to your support staff. And Chad Zerker at Tennessee is simply an elite human being. With 36 minutes till first pitch in Nashville against Vanderbilt, Tennessee's Billy Amick comes up to Chad, goes, "Hey man, you know that thing I need to wear? The one piece of my outfit that's kind of essential, can't really, it's unique to me. Well, that's at the hotel. Game starts in 36 minutes. What do we do? How do we get it?" And Chad, he finds a way. Winners find ways to win. Chad he drives over to the hotel. He sprints, gets the jersey, makes it back with 4 minutes to spare, which that's impressive. I believe they said the drive to the hotel was 16 minutes, 10 minutes back through Vanderbilt traffic or Nashville traffic, and a whole lot of sprinting in between, which there was a quote in the article. He was like, I just do. It wasn't like wasn't, I don't know what the doing is, but he's just doing it. And I'm right there.
So a couple of thoughts here. I think it's funny that teams allow the players to be responsible for this. I think what it should be is the team manager or the equipment people keep all of the uniforms with them, and then they are handed out after arrival at the field.
Yeah, I'm with you. Or
that
you
seems
just
like a much smarter move.
Hanging them up in the dugout, that was always like the easiest way, the most surefire way to make sure it was all there. And you do it right when you get to the field. That was
right when you get to the field. So this happened to me. This happened to me in a regional. So I used to go early and scout the other teams in the regional with my coach, with my head coach, because I'm a nut and I like that type of thing. And the way that our equipment uniform staff worked was we had to go pick it up like after a certain time, and that time was after I had already left, and someone was supposed to pick up my jersey for me and bring it. That person forgot, so we had to call someone who had quit the team, who was coming to the game, to pick up the jersey and drive it to me. So it just goes to show you that even if you're not still on the team, you can create value.
Yeah, just making an impact. You want to talk about having great people involved. For me, my freshman year, I was in charge of this thing when we traveled called the extras bag, which was just extra of everything we needed that weekend. So like, it was a luxury, like to have that safety blanket, but the anxiety of thinking you forgot the extras bag is the worst thing in the world. So don't be careful with the extras bag. That's the final lesson here.
Steve, I have one more moment I'd like to bring up, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't feel like doing pitchers and players of the week. I feel like I need Jordan for that, and I have to go.
Yeah, that's fine.
University of Kentucky, very good baseball team. I want to give a shout out to someone named Ben Cleaver. He's a freshman lefty. He closed out their Sunday win, the series clincher, over Florida. 2 men on, 2 out, bottom 10 in a 2-run game, and he gets a strikeout to end it. And he just absolutely like goes berserker, just totally bonkers. And usually like when a closer gets a big save, they'll go ham for like 5 seconds. This guy really keeps it running. Like the intensity does not waver. And so I was going to do some research on Ben Cleaver. So I went to his page on the Kentucky website, Steve. And a little fun fact about him is pitches left-handed, but throws other balls right-handed. What does that mean?
That I believe that means that the left hand is simply for getting buckets, similar to how Nick Young doesn't have any tattoos on his right arm. It's just like, hey, this is a one-trick pony. I actually have zero idea what the hell this means.
He pitches lefty. Does he throw a football, right? What other balls do you throw? What are throwable ball? Like, what are balls meant to be thrown? Dodgeballs, footballs. You don't throw a basketball. You don't throw a soccer ball. You don't throw a volleyball. Right?
Does it have to be a sphere?
Is he doing his like weighted ball stuff with his right arm?
Maybe that's it. It's like he's trying not to get out of balance body-wise. Maybe he's like looking to be a bodybuilder when he's done college baseball, and he's like, look, I got to keep my physique
right. You don't throw golf balls. You don't throw crystal balls. You don't throw LaMelo balls. I mean, all the other you throw with one hand. Maybe he writes with his right hand, but it doesn't say that. So Ben Cleaver, please let us know what's going on.
Yeah, I'll get you an answer on that one, Jake, because that's gonna eat me alive for a little bit here. Of course, before we go, we got to talk about the perfect way to out tailgate your rivals, Jake. Baseball barbecue
Steve.
Started when a broken grill fork and a cracked bat came together to make the perfect grilling tool. Now, Baseball Barbecue makes patented bat handle technology and barbecue tools and cutting boards that are licensed for the best teams in college baseball. Both fun and functional Baseball Barbecue products are perfect for casual fans and serious grillers alike, and a great way to out tailgate your rivals. Visit baseballbarbecue.com/D1Baseball to find the perfect grilling gift for the college baseball fan in your life. Thanks, Baseball Barbecue. Now, what a week that was in college baseball. Of course, we had some moments. We had some fun. We had some laughs. We did not have our guiding light, our Northern Star here this week in Jordan Schusterman. But alas, the good news is this isn't our swan song. This isn't the last episode we're going to do. We got more in the tank, baby. We got unfinished business where Jordan Schusterman will join us. But Jake Mintz, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And
you're welcome, Steve.
Traveling around for the Schoch Factor podcast. We love to see it.
I'm a committed individual. Steve, one last thing. I got to see Paul Skeens' MLB debut.
Yeah.
And there was a moment there was a moment where I was like, he could just be a senior. There is a world in which college baseball players have to play 4 years and not 3 if someone had decided those were the rules. And watching Paul Skeens, strike out Seiya Suzuki, I was laughing my ass off at the idea that he could have come back to LSU this year and just been another year older and better. Very funny.
That would have been unfair. It would have been like there would have to be a regulation or some sort of standard of like
the governor.
Honestly. Yep. We would have to nerf the technology.
No pitches over 102, Paul. Sorry, buddy. Steve, thank you for doing a podcast with me this week. I love you dearly. And just don't sleep through your alarm next week. Okay.
I won't. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
You actually might.
I might. No guarantees. That's the fast, loose lifestyle. Catching up with us. But thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Schoch Factor podcast on the D1 Baseball Network. Or maybe you tuned in on the SiriusXM app. If you did that, thank you for doing that too, because that's another way you can listen. Make sure to leave a review if you enjoy what you listen. But most importantly, make sure to have a great week and be a great person. Bye.